Step into analysis, please.
Welcome everybody. Today we are discussing Season 2, Episode 2 of Westworld, titled Reunion. The episode opens to Dolores and Arnold discussing a cityscape. They have brought her here to showcase the technology and find investors for the park. They discuss seeing the city for the very first time and how it's so amazing to Dolores, and in a way more meaningful because humans get used to seeing things like this. The grand scale of cityscapes are highlighted when you're a child. You wonder the purpose of each building and dream of reaching the top. But after years of observation, the constructs lose their wonder and just become buildings. This is important because it helps shape Arnold as a character. We see his dim view of humanity as opposed to us just being told about it through Ford. Young Ford enters the room and asks if they are ready. Arnold pleads with Ford that she isn't ready because of a recent update he added, but Ford finds that Dolores is their best in show. Thus he states he needs to put their best foot forward, acknowledging that Bernard is favoring Dolores. The two of them then leave this place, and Arnold takes her to a building he has under construction to move his family closer to his job. We could determine this location is probably China based on the writing on the wall, and we learn his wife has issues with the amount of time he spends at work. The issues of Arnold's life are highlighted throughout these clips and later again when they discuss the beauty of the world, showing that Arnold doesn't believe humans are the ones who deserve this. Dolores starts the same dialogue, and it snaps Arnold out of this moment. For Dolores to repeat herself, it means that she's exhibiting some of the issues the early hosts had, described by Ford in Season 1. Ford felt that they were easily distinguishable from the guests, but of course later on we see a scene with Logan, and I think he would argue otherwise. However, this moment of repeat for Arnold is immersion breaking. As a programmer, it's the back to work moment showing that they still have a long way to go. The opening sequence rolls, and we come to the man who Angela let go in Episode 1. He arrives at Sector 19 Remote Refurbishing Outpost. This is important because without it, it frames that this scene takes place in the Mesa, which as far as we know, Dolores has not yet made it to. The way that these outposts work is that one or two of them exist per sector, and that they can pop into the park and work to restore the hosts around that area, as opposed to having every host that's been killed sent back to the Mesa for repairs. It also shows that the outpost staff has been working for 13 hours and no next shift is coming, as well as them not having communication. This gives us a time reference about when this is occurring. So the massacre, them escaping, getting ambushed, him running off, and this all happens within approximately a day or two. The scene switches to Logan and William in the past, before their voyage to the park in Season 1. We learn that Logan's last name is Delos, meaning that he is the son of James Delos. We see something called the Argos Initiative approach him. Right away we see Angela, and the thought is that she's meant to showcase their technology. A private meeting is set up. We see a couple familiar faces, and Logan takes to examining people for, well, tells, trying to locate a single host, and in doing so making himself feel uncomfortable because, well, he's staring at people randomly. The importance of this scene should not be overlooked. This mind-blowing revelation that these were all hosts puts to the forefront that even in the early stages of the company, the robotic paradox has been conquered. This paradox highlights the moment in which humanity is no longer able to decide between human and machine, when the mechanical sounds of gears and chains are taken over by just talking and movement like you or I. So for him to examine them so closely and still fail to acknowledge that these are robots, only to discover that she was the robot only because of how perfect she was, and then only to discover that they are all robots, well, I mean, you witnessed it. It is a powerful moment. Also, a quick side note, this host here is the same one Dolores confronts later on. The way the hosts stop moving as well is something noteworthy. So far, the only person we've seen exhibit nonverbal commands like this is Ford. So for them to show this again means it's a permission that you can set for other people or hosts, and it's something that is probably going to be used more, potentially Maeve or even Angela. Logan then sleeps with as many male and female hosts as he can fit in his bed and floor. We see Dolores making eye contact with Angela at the very end. It really makes me wonder if Dolores did act in her assigned position this day, would the issues between Logan and William have ever happened? If you think about it, when Dolores first meets them in the park and William takes a liking to her, that entire immersion of this host could be real or coming to life would be shut down by Logan immediately, saying that this was the host that they sent out to do test runs for, everyone to take a run at. The scene switches back to Sector 19 Outpost, and they show Teddy's history, a magic tablet controlling their lives. We learn that Teddy has died 5,746 times. If you watch my other videos, you would know that this scene was coming up. Based on the context, Dolores needed Teddy to be alive in the sense that she is. Teddy takes his anger out on the engineer, and then we come to Lawrence Lawrence once again hanging from a tree. I think somewhere in this actor's contract it states a hanging to non-hanging ratio in which the audience needs to see him suspended for a certain amount of time each season. William quickly shoots the hosts and goes to cut down Lawrence. The host that he shot comes back and shoots William. The idea of them being harder to kill is blatantly joked about, but this is important because their tolerance to pain and their death is actually programmed. For instance, if you shoot a host in the heart before the massacre, it would likely send a kill signal and the host would cease function until repair. But these are death variables and they're entirely programmed. The host brain just needs to communicate with the rest of the body so that the body can function. To outright terminate the host, you need to either puncture the center brain module or the path of its communication, the spinal cord. And thus the reason that we're shown this centered killing blow. Now, that isn't to say that's how he's going to have to kill all the hosts that he sees. For the most part, these death variables are still assigned to the hosts, and getting shot is still getting shot and killing them, except for Hector here. He is shot a dozen times and still manages to maintain until they heal him up. This is because last season Maeve reduced his pain sensory and made that death variable non-existent or harder to obtain at least. But again, if you puncture the center mass or spinal cord leading to the brain, the host body will fail. William rides to a small bar and punches a hole through a wall, finding a medical kit hidden away. He states that it's cheating, but because Ford is changing the rules, he heals his arm just the same. This is the first time that we get acknowledgement that this healing gun works on humans, unless the man in black is, of course... No, that can't be. He reveals that Lawrence is not the bandit that he thought he was, but a simple tour guide. And it's this concept of host self-understanding that's touched upon for the first time. William states that he wants to assist in this revolution, but they'll all be dead. Real dead this time. His word selection is odd here, but the understanding is he shares the goals of the hosts. He understands that this park is limited in time because the hosts that just commit these mass-scale homicide have the cavalry coming, and his fun is going to be cut short. Others would consider what he's doing to just be a death wish. Either way, they make plans to head west, and he is working toward a place hidden from God, where your sins are never tallied up nor judgment cast upon you. He states that he has received his judgment just the same and takes issue with it. So he's going to fight his way back to this location and then finally burn the place to the ground. We come back to Dolores and Teddy, and we see the same poor sap being tortured for information. He states that the protocol for system-wide failure is to secure one sector at a time, and then they'll meet at a rally point. He points to a section of the map, and I believe this to be the beach where Bernard woke up. Next, we get to the most important part of this episode. Dolores picks a random host body with an intact brain module and tells the engineer to turn him back on and make his story take them to the Confederados. This is the first time we're shown that Dolores isn't concerned about converting the hosts to a state of consciousness. I would go so far as to argue she understands that with them being conscious, practicing free will, it's going to be harder for them to survive this encounter with Delos and lessen the chance that they have to escape. She's willing to become the person controlling everybody if it means that they hate her but stay alive, as opposed to them spending too much time trying to develop each own's free will. Dolores says to the man, who again is a member of the Delos company with authority, "Do you even know what you are guarding here, the real purpose of this place?" hinting that she has seen it before with William. We then come to Dolores, Teddy, young William, and James Delos. James tells William that he's seen the books, for it has 2 to 3 years before this place starts hemorrhaging money and they go bankrupt. James proclaims that this entire thing is folly, but William sees this as leverage and arguing point to get a better deal, price-wise, or additional rights to the majority shareholders. Delos may be the reason this entire endeavor stayed alive, but it doesn't mean that Ford was willing to part with every piece of the intellectual property that him and Arnold created while starting up. William goes on to provide that even from the early stages, the importance of this place was the data that they could collect from guests. William pulls out his monster-sized balls and provides the very person in control of his future with the following.
And if you don't see the business in that, then you're not the businessman that I thought you were.
The scene ends, but right before we see Dolores standing there, potentially hearing the purpose of this park being the user data. Now we come to Dolores and Teddy after they've repurposed the host that takes them to the Confederados. They run into Maeve, and my personal favorite scene starts. Dolores makes her aware of an ongoing war, but Maeve says that she doesn't want anything to do with that. She simply wants to escape with her daughter. Dolores provides that a war will come no matter what, and that they must fight to become free. Maeve questions that freedom. If if she is just following the commands of another, whether it be host or human. Hints that exact thing to Teddy, that maybe he's only doing what he's doing because Dolores is making him do it, and at some point this will 100% come into question, and I think we'll see a conflict between Teddy and Dolores. Maeve continues on, saying that her defense of freedom means that she must allow others to do as they please, freely, so she carries on. The scene comes to the Confederados, and we're met with a very Last Supper-esque dinner. She provides that she is looking for men to fight in her war. From their understanding of their reality, they are Confederados actually fighting in a war already. The scene goes the way that it does because of a hugely important thing that I touched on before. For other hosts to become alive, they have to admit to themselves that they are a host and understand that everything that they have done has been controlled to this point. For a foreign stranger to come in and state such would be insanity. It would be the equivalent of someone today walking up to you and demanding that you're in a simulation and you must join forces to escape the simulation, and it will involve killing other people to do so. It's a hard thing to come to terms with, and they're programmed to be hostile in this situation, so Dolores decides that it will be easier just to kill them, and the scene ends with them being brought back to life, removing that death variable. In addition, Dolores letting them know that she killed God. On first watch, I believe that she was going to make these people follow her as she did the Confederado before, but after a couple additional watches, I think the importance of the previous scene with Maeve is actually to enlighten Dolores that she can't just dictate what all hosts do, even if it is for the betterment of the race. They must choose to follow her because if she is fighting for liberty of hosts, their willingness to follow must be the way that she wins this battle. If she programs all hosts to follow her, she becomes the villain, ruling over hosts just as the humans once did. We now come to James Delos' retirement party. Dolores is present playing the piano, and we meet Emily, William's child, and we also meet William's wife. James jokes that this doesn't look like much of a retirement party, but rather a coronation. This is a slight jab that William is more celebrating his advancement instead of James' retirement. William says, "Our arrangement has been a perfect fit. You stepping down doesn't help me at all." From the context, it's assumed that he's stepping down for reasons related to his health, but then he throws this into the works. "And I was told I might not have to." William replies that just to have some patience, they are working on it, but he follows through with he doesn't have as much time as others. Then we come to Logan doing intravenous drugs and coming face to face with Dolores once again. This is after the events of season 1, meaning that after William rises to power and overtakes his brother-in-law's position. He is portrayed now as the outcast or black sheep of the family. The drug abuse is also important if you consider that William's wife killed herself taking too many drugs. But he moves the conversation to state that the people up there are just celebrating the species starting to burn, and the funniest part is that they were the ones who lit the match. Finishes with hoping that their forever be blissfully short. We then come to William in the present, arriving at Pariah. He meets the new host playing a lazo, and the importance of the scene is that Ford is communicating with William that he must travel this journey alone, and we find out that it was him that created the Valley Beyond, and it was also his biggest mistake. We're then taken to young William, potentially around the time of the party, referring to when he makes this big mistake. William is really just being a dick, or maybe trying to separate his feelings, making himself realize what he's yelling at Dolores to be true. We then transition to the terraforming machines Ford used in season 1, and hints that William included Dolores in his plan further, as in after the building is built there, that she'll likely be inside at some point, knowing the secrets and knowing what the weapon is. And finally, Dolores leads the newly persuaded Confederados, and they have a good-sized troop following their command. The episode ends with the Valley Beyond wasn't a place, but a weapon, and it was showed to her by an old friend. So the big question of the episode rests on those shoulders. What is the Valley Beyond? Well, I'm willing to bet it isn't a place that we've seen yet, and it is definitely underground. I have a follow-up video coming out this week looking only at that question. Well, because it's packed with so much information, I had to cut it out of this video. My script was actually twice the size and had to think in terms of making this review and explanation before the wild tinfoil hat theories come flying all over the place. I don't ever want you guys to be the last to know, so I'm going to tell you. I'm pretty positive it's immortality, but to prove that is a whole separate adventure for later. Thank you once again, everybody. You guys are all awesome, and if you want to support this channel, please like, comment, and share, or you can join the Patreon community just as easy. Speaking of which, John Levin, you recently became the top tier donator to this channel, and thus your name will forever live in the halls of Valhalla, or at least this channel. Much love, everybody. I'll see you on the next one.